we'll have this discussion.
Discussion? What discussion?
This is a discussion combustion.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado, this is Discussion Combustion Podcast with your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Arthur Raw.
Welcome into Discussion Combustion episode 157.
We got Jeff Morton on tonight, guys, a Denver legend, host of the CSG podcast and the Gen X show.
Absolutely. We talk about wonderful things like talking in person, growing up with different technologies,
sharing different experiences through podcast evolution,
and also, of course, the importance of authenticity.
Tune in and enjoy the show. What are you drinking on there? You got a nice little Cabernet, a little Pinot Noir. What you got?
It is a blend called the Chocolate Block. I got it right here.
Nice little red blend.
Yeah, and it's I would go into all the things on there, but it's mostly a Syrah, but it's actually pretty good. I like them kind of earthy like this, and that it's good. I like to have a drink while I'm podcasting. I don't know about you guys, but I like to have something there because
we might have a couple more than something,
We'll
however many something
is,
we might put a couple more on top of that.
See, I would when I was going to come down, I was going to bring some with me, so you guys can have some too. And I'm like, you know what? I'll just have it while I'm doing this. Who gives a flying, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't care. So
I mean, we're all drinking, so that still works whether you're in studio or not. And we'll get you in next time you're on the show. We'll have you live action, but that's one of the great things about the Zoom is we're able to do this, even though you're probably 20 minutes away from us. Hey, we're going remote. You're zooming in. We got Jeff Morton with us, one of the Denver's legends. I'm glad you could be here with us, man.
Well, thank you. My nickname on Twitter for a long time was the King of Thornton, and that was given to me by my original podcast co-host Nate Timmons back in 2011 when we started the podcast.
13 years ago, you started a podcast before anybody was even doing that. And that's still going too. You're consistent.
Yeah, I do two. Yeah, I try to do 2 a week. And that was, but it went from 3 people doing it to just me. And I have never done sponsorships or anything like that. I read for a wine place, but that's just because I went there once and I liked it. But it's just been, I don't know how I've been able to go through. We're over 600 episodes, and
wow,
I don't know how I've been able to do it for that long, to be quite honest with you guys, because you run out of shit to talk about after a while. There must be something up here that says crank out something to talk about, so.
Yeah, no, I hear what you mean for sure. I mean, 600 episodes, dude, that is a long haul. I mean, I think this is episode 157 for us. 157 It's taken us 3 years to do it.
Right.
And it's been a grind, man. I mean, we're in here every week. So I get what you're saying. You kind of run out of things to talk about, but that's also what's fun about, doing our show is having just different people in every week and guys and gals that I haven't had a chance to meet in person. And then it's like, well, what are they doing? And it's, spirals, you can talk current events. I feel like there's always, good content to talk about. Like, are we going to peel back the layers of this Amber Heard, Johnny Depp crap?
No,
I mean, that's all anyone's been talking about.
No,
today.
we're not
touching
touching that
all day.
I don't want to touch that today. I mean, do you want to get into that, Jeff? Because we can,
let me tell you something. And I'm reading this with the utmost sincerity to people who are on this Twitter talking about this. It's like, don't you people have your own lives to worry about?
Yes,
that is exactly the thing that comes. I'm like, don't you? Is there something going on? Is there a defamation trial in your life that you can talk about and not someone else's? And is it because they're celebrities? I don't get the culture.
I don't know. Yes, I'm sorry to cut you short there, man, but I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to say the hard thing, all right, that maybe people don't really want to hear today, but, my last name is Raw, so that's how I give it. All right, so people who are focused on this trial obsessively, do you have something going on in your life? Like the example you just said, do you have something going on? Because I know that myself and Kevin included, we're both so busy that, we don't really, have time to just be super focused on this. And then also it's just another piece of drama that's being thrown into our heads, right? Like where's the Ukraine conflict has disappeared from like the feed of social media. Like it's still happening, you know, and then COVID has disappeared from the feed, and like there's all it, and it's just the next thing. So to all the listeners, you know, let's all be aware of what our minds are being fed, and it doesn't actually add to any substance that helps us grow as an individual. Like I feel like that's the hard question that we all need to ask ourselves is, what I'm paying attention to, what I'm feeding my brain with, does it actually help me grow as an individual?
None of this has ever crossed my mind as something to obsess about, because I've got enough shit to deal with myself. And I think it's not that I don't care. It's just that it doesn't cross my point of view, you know. And I think maybe it's because I do two podcasts, CSG podcast and the Gen X show. And I am very much a Gen Xer, and I do not give a crap about this sort of thing. And I think that is just built into my DNA. If you were born in the 70s, you are destined to not give a shit. And I think, and I, if you ever talk to someone who was born from 1970, I mean, I don't know how old you guys are, but like from 75 to 79.
Yeah, we were both born in the 80s.
Yeah. You guys are slightly more optimistic than us. That's the only thing I can say.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I was going to ask your opinion on that. That's funny.
Yeah. That is like, do you guys when were you both born?
I'm 87. Kevin is 89.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
man.
Late 80s. Yeah. So we just kind of, we're the elder millennials, so to speak, because I think we're just on that cusp of being a millennial, but we're the elder millennials. So I don't really know what that means. I think they're just labels, but I smell what you're stepping in there.
Oh yeah, no, I did. If you talk to anyone who was born in the 70s, we all it's just and I've told people this a lot. We are all act older than we are. We are all extremely, extremely cynical for some reason. And I've never been able to figure it out. And we were called the latchkey generation because we raised ourselves. So if you look at people who are like in mid to 40s to mid 50s, all of us, either if we didn't come from a divorced household, it is like maybe we came from working parents. So it was like everyone was like left on their own. And that is why I think probably why we all developed this personality. I've tried to cover it up by being slightly, pleasant, but if there are people out there who are like too overtly cynical, it's just for whatever reason, there's a generational thing that actually it's a stereotype, but in my view, in my experience, has actually been true.
I mean, it's interesting. Like you think about like the stereotypes of generations and, like how the newer generations, like maybe don't know carpentry or like, fixing the house type of stuff. But there is some depth to that as well. Like stereotypes exist for a reason. And sure, there's a lot of variety and individualism that breaks the stereotypes, but a lot of it's true, right? If we're being honest. Right. So, growing up in the 70s, you didn't have all the distractions that even growing up in the 90s to 2000s kids had. Like I had a Nintendo 64 growing up, and that was after the NES. But like in the 70s, like there wasn't like even the Atari. Was the Atari out back then, or like
early 80s?
Early 80s.
So even there, it's like, there's all these different, like you were playing with physical toys, hanging out, jumping ramps on the bike, like actually living a childhood. And that is something that has died within new generations. That is concerning to me personally, because, if you're just growing up as a toddler and you have these screens in front of your face all the time, and you're just constantly getting that dopamine input from something that isn't tangible, like how is that going to treat people as they get older? So like people like yourself, Generation X, all that, like I feel like there's a lot to be learned and passed down from your generation, because there's no other way that these new people are going to learn these important values of actually like enjoying life outside of a screen.
Have you guys been watching Stranger Things at all? The new season, is that your thing at all?
No, it's not. It's not mine. I'm not caught up on it.
Because they've tried to go down the old growing up in the 80s nostalgia. They get some right, they don't get others right. It's one of those things where if you go through the mists of time, you don't remember everything accurately, even if you're someone who has lived, I'm in my mid 40s, but I mean, there's people older than me, and we all have differing memories about same things, right? So you can always look back and say, we did this thing one way, we did it another way, but you'll never remember it as it actually was at the time, and how it made you feel at that point in time. It's always through the lens of what I'm doing right now. I mean, that's just the way memory works. And one of the things I've tried to do is look into my own experiences and analyze them in a way that is healthy and doesn't lock me in the past. I make fun of myself a lot. I'm a Gen Xer, and I do all this stuff. I've run something called the Gen X show, but I don't think that I don't believe in my own mental capability. I'm stuck in the 90s or anything like that. I can be, and if you get me started, oh boy, I can like go off. But I try to learn from what I did and apply that to now, because if you're stuck in one thing, you are never ever going forward. You will just be stuck there, and you'll be someone who just doesn't advance in life. And I know you guys are very much like that. You're trying to go forward and pushing into making this a very successful podcast / media thing that you're doing. And kudos to you guys, because I was introduced to you through a mutual friend of ours, and it's been nice to go back and listen to your episodes and see your evolution there. And that is what has intrigued me, because I respond to the drive and the success that you guys have built so far. It really is impressive.
Well, appreciate the kind words there, Jeff. Yeah. Thanks. I mean, it's always good to hear that, from especially someone that's been doing it as long as you, of course. I think just sticking to the true conversations and doing it for the right reasons, I think has kept us coming back for more and just really enjoying what we do. I think it doesn't feel like a chore to have to come sit here and right. chat with, anybody really. It's a lot of fun, right? We get a chance to learn, and it's just been really fun to be on this journey for sure. And, to echo off your point, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, man, I was outdoors all the time. Like you couldn't get me inside. I mean, I liked video games and stuff, but I wanted to be outside more than I was indoors. And I grew up in the woods, beautiful lake, stuff like that. And so those memories for me are very fun. But I get what you're saying with kind of being, stuck in those old places. I think I got a couple guys from high school I went to that, still think they're going to be, all-time pro football players because they had a great time in, high school football. And that's great. But they're stuck in that time. Right. And so we got to innovate a little bit and keep this train moving.
Right. We do got to keep it moving. One thing for all your epic podcast, all your social stuff, we will leave a link for all that in the comments. So that'll be easy for listeners to check out, because we are talking with one of Denver's greatest right now. I mean, Jeff's been putting it in for a long time.
Absolutely.
But to kind of jump back into what we're talking about, a saying that I came up with a while back was, if you don't change with the times, then you will get left behind. Right. And the times are always going to change, right? So you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable to a certain extent, comfortable challenging yourself and and trying new things, because the second that you become complacent, the mind becomes idle at that point. It stops being challenged, and then you kind of lose your muse, whatever it's for. And I've been there. I've been in that place where I was just checking the boxes and life was really unfulfilling to me. And I remember that place. And, to break that is not an easy thing to do. You have to be willing to face fear a little bit. For example, I was walking on this path near the studio the other day, and I saw this gal that was hanging out, and she was just reading a book with a cute puppy, and she was hanging out there, and I kind of walked by, I waved, whatever. And so I kept walking. I just kind of was on my brain, like, I should go talk to this person. I should go introduce myself to this person.
Right.
But immediately my mind starts talking myself out of it. It's like, no, like, you don't need to do that, or, maybe just keep walking. But, I faced it, and I was just like, you know what, if she's there on my walk back, I'm just going to go say what's up. Right. And so I ended up meeting somebody amazing. So I just went up there and I was like, hey, you mind if I chat with you for a minute? My name's Arthur, and I just kind of gave her the lowdown. Like, I'm with this production company right here. We're doing this. And she's also an entrepreneur that focuses on women's health. And like, I had this whole conversation and like heard her journey. And it's because I was willing to do something that I maybe thought I could be uncomfortable doing. Right. Like, so it's breaking the normal stuff and doing something that kind of makes you like, okay, I'm going to do it, and you just got to jump.
Got to challenge yourself. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a solid point to echo on. And one of the things I'd like to ask you, Jeff, is because you've been doing this for so long, you've seen the evolution of this business. You've seen it go from, you were doing this before smartphones were in everyone's hands, so to speak. So you were kind of in it as it was starting to become a thing. You've seen it evolve and transition. What do you think's been the biggest obstacle for you personally to continue to, grow your show and to network with people as the podcast industry continues to develop?
I was very fortunate. I already had a relationship via a blog called Denver Stiffs. And I was a media member by then. So it was easier for me and my two former podcast hosts to get into doing it because we already had the national platform at the time. That it really is. And then something I respect about you two, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, and I hope you don't take it that way, but this is 100% true. What I respect is that you have done it completely holistically and organically, and not without like I said with me, the aid of being part of SB Nation, which is what I was at the time. So which is a part of Vox, which is this whole giant media empire that was, I could go on forever about that, but I was part of that. So I got a leg up on it, and I kind of take that into consideration because I don't know necessarily if everyone's going to follow that same path or can follow that same path. But what I appreciate about what you guys have done is that you've taken this podcast and grown it to where it is by just being innovative and having good conversations. And one of the things I love about podcasting is talking. And it's like listening in, you're like, if you're listening to this in the car or you're watching this on YouTube right now, you're just listening to an organic conversation between three guys.
Shooting the shit, baby.
Shooting the shit.
Like playing billiards.
And people love that shit, right? And this is why it works. And what you guys have done is do it by yourself. And that is exactly what I admire about this. And taking it from that and growing it into this, to me, is very, very impressive. See, from my point of view, from someone who was aided by having the leg up from being in the media, someone who's covered the Denver Nuggets since 2009, I've got all those connections, and I've talked to those people, and I've had these guests on the podcast and all that stuff. And you know what? Most people are like you guys who just have to do it yourself. And most people fall off, and they start for a couple months. And I mean, if you go into Apple Podcasts, it is littered with people who have 4 episodes of a podcast, and you haven't been updated in 2 years. Like, the people have just stopped. And you guys kept on it, 150 something episodes. And that's really, pardon my language, but it's really fucking impressive to me. And I think you guys have done this in a way that I just, you and our mutual friend, John Ekstrom,
love John,
done this in a way that I have to give you kudos. I really do.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, absolutely. That means a lot coming from, guys like you and John that have done this for a long time. We're very fortunate to, have rubbed shoulders with you guys and exchanged ideas on podcasting. And, it's just really cool, man. I think that's what I love about it the most is the people you meet along the way and the experiences you learn. Because when Art and I stepped into this, had no idea what we were doing. And I said it for a while. We still don't really know. We're just trying to do the right things. Right. And just continue to innovate. And you can always learn new things. I mean, like we were just talking about, this is a constantly innovating business. I mean, it started out, as a radio style show. Stern did it and Rogan took it to a level, and you came in early and set your feet in the sand there. And now it's turned into this beast where they're doing it in front of live audiences. But it all comes back to the one thing that I love the most is organic, real conversations. Right. Because we live in a time, Jeff, where I think we've lost touch with that a little bit.
All the texters,
the filters, a lot of that stuff. It's all well and good, but we've lost touch with having that sit down at a table or over Zoom and have a great conversation, share a wine, share a beer, what's going on, and talk about the things that really matter.
Dude, the way you said share a wine, share a beer, like I want to sit across the table from you and share one. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just saying.
That's exactly that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I got to give credit though to, because it pays to show up. Like if you want the job, you want to get it done, then just show up. That's like half the battle. That's what they always say. But the amount of support that we've had, like our peers that helped be a part of the show and helped out in the beginning, and all of the amazing people that we've met and networked with, including yourself, Jeff, along the way, that were willing to share an hour, 2 hours with us just to hang out and talk. Like, I'm so thankful for that. And that's really what's been the pillar of our show, is just that human dynamic. But it's something that everybody needs, is just a good, meaningful conversation. There's so many surface conversations right now. And I just feel like let's actually get to the core of all this.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I love the city of Denver. This is such a great place to do this in. I grew up in New England and came out here and I absolutely fell in love with this area and the people out here. It's been fantastic. And the city's been really great to us in accepting our show and what we do. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah, but Jeff, you're obviously a good host, because Kevin asked you a great question about all your platforms, your podcast, and you flipped this back on us like that. Like, so you obviously are well experienced.
Yeah. He's a tenured vet.
I'm a pro at flipping shit on people, and I'll say this, guys. Here's an anecdote, I guess, that is a good way to put this, as far as the evolution of podcasts. When I first started this podcast back in 2011, people didn't know necessarily what it was, because what I tried to describe to people is that podcasts actually started taking off in the about late 2000s. And it really was because, and people think this is cliche at this point, but it really was because of Bill Simmons. And Simmons kind of rode this wave at ESPN. He was doing these streaming audio things on ESPN, and they were 45 minutes long. And it was just this guy from Boston talking about the Celtics, and all this stuff. He'd been writing for them as a blogger, but when he started moving into podcasting, he found his voice, and it took off. In about 2010, it cratered. No one was doing podcasting. No one was. And when I basically started CSG with Nate Timmons and Ross Martin, it was really at a bottom. No one was really doing it. And it certainly weren't doing it about the Denver effing Nuggets, right? So there was a gap, and
a huge void.
It's an extremely huge void. And I got to be honest with you guys. The reason we did it and why I did it is because I like doing it. I like talking to people like you guys. I like talking. This anecdote, and I swear to God, the only reason I know this guy, which means a lot to me, maybe not to other people, is because I have a podcast and it allowed me to do other things. There was a guy released a book in 2019, it was the former drummer of my favorite band, the Black Crowes. And his name was Steve Gorman, is Steve Gorman still. And I was like, I just reached out to him. I don't know what got into me, but I was like, yeah, maybe this guy wants to be on my podcast. Well, shoot, he did. Yeah. And I was like, holy crap. And through that podcasting, I was able to meet this person And I wasn't saying that to name drop. I was saying that because it's just podcasting. And when you think about it, it's just the three of us sitting around shooting the shit. The whole concept of getting someone on who was able, like, did things in a stratosphere I'll never reach, and was willing to sit down with me on a podcast, I think is just still to this day mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing, because right? I don't doesn't compute. It doesn't compute. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. The opportunities that we've had from this and the people that we met, but my main thing is coming out of love. And that is just like, everyone is my peer, every single person on this planet.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you are like, cause I and the listeners know this, I bring it up every week. Sorry, Clint, but I overcame a heavy opiate addiction for a very, very long time. And I know people are still there too. Like, so it's like, it doesn't matter where you're at in your life or what you've accomplished, because people are people, and podcasting has taught me that true and through.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to piggyback all of that, I think it, a year into this, it kind of, we didn't know what was going to happen with it. I feel like, I think the vision was always there and the drive, and then, meeting guys like John X and, hooking up with Paul Caroli and some of these names in Denver and JD Lopez. These guys have been doing a long time, Denver degenerates. We just started rubbing shoulders with the Denver podcasters and tried to learn and innovate and respect what these guys are doing. Right. Not trying to copycat, but just trying to, hey, what works, what doesn't, hot, cold buttons, things of that nature. And I don't really know that there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think that one of the things we talk about here is the CQC, consistent quality content. Those three things will always drive, I think, decent results if you really invest in yourself, good equipment, good guests, good conversations, but most importantly, do it because we love it, right?
I like how you said that, Jeff. I like how you said that part.
Because that's a good point to echo off. Don't do it because you have to do it. Do it because you love to do it. And I think that I look forward every week, Jeff, to grabbing some beers on my way here from the liquor store. I get excited to come down and have a conversation. That's how it should be. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm having a great chat with you.
Oh yeah, no. And look at it this way. Through doing this, I got to meet you guys. I got to meet Molly Smith. I got to meet, with the great podcast, Did That Age Well, which is one of the best concepts for a podcast I've ever heard. There's JD Lopez, as you
epic host,
and
hostess,
epic, just so good, funny guy. It is just there's so many different things here in Denver that doesn't get the mentions that I think it deserved, because I think Denver podcasting and I say Denver podcasting because we're all podcasters, but it is to me an unexploited, but a gem that needs to be polished, because all of us, you guys, JD, Molly, the girls who do Let's Get Drunk and Talk About Your Wedding, which is another fantastic podcast. There is ways that you could talk and see different crazy but amazing subjects. And I have learned more, I think. I'm getting into lecture mode here. I should have like
please do.
I need to have those suits with the pads on the arms,
Getting serious.
Professorial. But there's so much I've learned from podcasting and listening to podcasts. I've actually, and I love learning, and that's one of the things that's kept me going. And I have learned so much, and I love listening and listening to people like you guys. I've been exposed to people I didn't know before, and I really enjoyed it. And I highly suggest anyone who's listening to this, who's a listener of mine, to check out these guys. Their past episodes are really good, and just learn about just people's lives. And talk about shit like we're talking about tonight, just regular shit. And honestly, it's stimulating, it's great, and it's good to hear. And I'm loving the evolution from when I started back in the Stone Age, because it is now, people are so much better than they were back then. So much better. It's not even close.
And in what way do you mean that they're better? Like as far as creators, or what do you?
Yeah, they are qualitatively sound, visually, like you guys are doing. They are much better at getting their point across. It took me a couple of years to find my voice. If anyone listens to podcasts from say like 2012, that person is not the same person who's talking to you right now. I had to find this voice, but I think people coming into it now are much better at hitting the ground running and finding that thing that they want to talk about. Not everyone can find their thing. Like my second podcast, the Gen X Show, it is basically a podcast about being old. If I'm quite honest with you guys, it's like I do deep dives into the Smashing Pumpkins. I mean, we're not talking about like I'm not going into Kendrick Lamar here. So this is old stuff.
So, with the Smashing Pumpkins, because it got annoying to me whenever that song would come on. Do you have the time to listen to me whine? I'd be like, nope, and I would change the station immediately.
That's Green Day.
Oh my gosh, I did get it wrong. See, look at
this is
I can see him shaking his head.
I get 3 of these a year. Okay, I think this is my first or second.
I don't know. I think you're on. That might have been strikeout.
Was
bro.
that strike 3?
I think you're out.
Well, sorry, listeners, but I can no longer be a host of Discussion Combustion.
I'm sorry I did that on your own podcast. I ushered you out of your own podcast. I'm sorry.
I'm glad you did, Jeff. Someone's got to call this.
Oh yeah, that was Green Day. That was Green Day, though. You're right. Yeah. But that song I always skipped.
I mean, look, I have love for both those bands for sure.
They're
but
good.
Going back to what you were saying, Jeff, I think what's cool too is like you were saying, when you started in the Stone Age. There's still a paper trail of that, which I love about podcasts. People can go back to the old school and be like, well, what is he talking about? And listen to what you were talking about in 2012, and I think I'm actually intrigued to go back and listen out of those old days because it's cool to see, it's almost like you're growing up with these people. It was like me growing up watching the guys from Jackass, and now they're all old, and Jackass Forever was decent, but it's like, I grew up idolizing those guys, and I feel like I grew up with them a little bit, and that's what's cool is that you can chronologicalize that.
Oh yeah, like it's so funny that you mentioned that because someone had mentioned to me, and you guys wouldn't remember this, but there was a show on TV in the early '90s called Headbangers Ball, and it was just metal, right? And it was a great little show that the host of that was a guy named Ricky Rackman. And it was just metal like you would not believe. It was early 90s metal, and they would play Metallica and Megadeth and all these bands. And someone brought it up to me. I forget who it was. Maybe it was someone on Twitter, and they brought it up. And it was immediately, and I don't know if this happens to you guys, but this definitely happens to me, where they brought up that, and I was like immediately transported back to 1991. I was like, it's there in my head. Just at the mention of that, is there things that I'm like turning this back on you guys, and I apologize. I do this. But
it comes naturally. You can't help yourself, Jeff.
I am like interviewing you guys. But do you guys have things that do that? Like, do you have like cultural things that were mentioned? Then you're like, oh my God, I'm there again.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of timestamps that come up for me. Music being one of them for sure. If they're especially music, that'll snap me right back into whatever year that song came out, whatever was going on that year. I'm like, oh man, when this song came out, I was finger banging this one, or, whatever. I was go over here doing this, sorry to get vulgar, but that's where my mind goes with it.
I was over here all wholesomely thinking about like sometimes the tater tots at Burger King bring me back to childhood and shit, or like something like that. But yeah, that works too, man. No, there's definitely a lot of things like that. And that's what's interesting about the mind though. All right. And this is some real shit, and it's happening in your life, whether you know it or not, but your subconscious is recording every single event, every smell, emotion, memory, touch, feel. Like it captures it all. Like you all got it in here. And so like that's what that is. Like, you hear like this old Metallica, or when I see the Jurassic Park logo, for example, like that brings me back to childhood. Like it brings me back to one of the most epic movies I saw as a kid that was R-rated. I was not allowed to see this movie, and I got to still see it, and so that's that nostalgia, but that's your subconscious mind just giving you what it's captured. And that's what's interesting about this tightrope of life is we remember everything, you know, hopefully we remember everything till the end, you know, Parkinson's and all that sort of those horrible diseases. Sure. But, you know, it's when you have your mind, like you're going to remember it all. And so that's the thing is like living a life in the now that will create meaning when you reflect back on it. And it's so important to enjoy your time and really like capture that moment while it's happening, because like, guess what, this moment, like I'm having a blast of a conversation with you. I know Kevin's having a great time. Like he was saying, like we have such a great time coming in here, and, you know, I want to like live in this moment a little bit longer. But this is one of those moments that will create like another energy and moving forward. So as far as nostalgia goes, probably my biggest things that will bring me back to nostalgia moments is the Nintendo 64, Wildcats. Is that the like no, Thundercats, and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Those bring you back, huh?
Yeah, those bring me back.
Thundercats are on the move.
Thundercats. He like pulls out the sword and shit. It fucking roars.
Oh my God, you guys have no idea. There are things that I you know, it's funny, and in nostalgia is like a drug. You can get really intoxicated by nostalgia, and quite frankly, I embrace a lot of it, because, you know, once you accrue enough memory, things that are happening in front of you happen faster. Like when you're younger, everything is so far away from you. Everything is ahead of you, and you haven't accrued enough memory for things to be, for you to be wistful about something, for like looking through the mists of time, you know, like in Wayne's World, you know, that stuff. There's no way that you could do that. But as you get older and you reach a point to where the pull of thinking about a good time or thinking about a memory of a certain thing, or even a bad one, is there. It's omnipresent, and you usually reach that point by the time you're in your mid 30s. And
I'm feeling that right now. So I'm knowing what you're saying.
And then it becomes how you deal with it. And most people, when they have midlife crises or something like that, it's because their memories are better than their future, they think. So they have to recapture whatever happened circa, you know, in my case, 1994. But there's others that were like, you know, by the time I'm, you know, I was in my 20s, I got to dye my hair again. I got to get a hot car. I got to do all this shit. And in reality, what it is like how you deal with the fact that you have to approach. I mean, I'm getting philosophical on you guys. I apologize.
No, I like this. I like this.
You have to approach life as if the next thing ahead of you will be even better than the last. And that what usually is what drives people and makes them move forward in life. And a lot of people, at least my age and older, get stuck with thinking that their prime is past, that they got stuck somewhere in their 20s or something like that, or for some people their high school years, and they just, it's a state of arrested development is what they call it. And that's always disappointing to me, because I, at least in my view, I at least think that my best years are ahead of me, and my best memories will come from when I'm 70, thinking back to when I was 44, you know. So
I like how deep you went there, and I like the layers that you touched on, and a lot of great food for thought there for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Absolutely. Because I mean, you know, and it varies person to person, right? Because some people are a little more complacent, right? And they go, oh, look,
right,
my best years are behind me. It's, you know, I did that, been there, done that, which, you know, is true. Like you said, when you're 70, sitting in the rocking chair, sipping on a cold PBR or whatever your beer of choice is, and you're looking back like, oh, when I was 43, this happened and that, you know, I like the live in the now, plan for the future, not forget where you came from, you know, look in that rearview mirror, but we're steering the ship forward. And there's a lot of good things, and we can create and go out and own it at any moment. That's what I love about it. There's so many great opportunities ahead of us, Jeff. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I have a hard time sitting still. I don't like to be complacent. I don't know. I'm sure all three of us kind of share that a little bit. Like, what's the next thing? What can we do to innovate here? You know, there's got to be something we can do.
Right. Shit, I was chilling last night, and I was feeling anxious for not doing anything last night. The last time I didn't do anything was Friday night, and before then I was like just rolling. So even on like the one little brief night that I'm trying to give myself a night to relax, like I still feel like I'm not doing something.
That's where I'm at. I get anxious with it. I share that with you for sure.
Antsy.
Yeah, a little antsy. Yeah. Start pacing, you know, almost feel guilty. Like, oh, I could be doing something right now. What do you think about that, Jeff? As far as the work-life balance goes, I mean, there has to be some of that there, and I'm trying to learn how to do it.
You know, I am very fortunate. And I'll once again, I'll give you an anecdote. When I was in my teens, I worked at a grocery store.
Oh, me too.
And I ended up working. Yep. And you know, probably from experience, that you have to be wired a certain way to deal with customers. You have to be a certain kind of personality to deal with people who are coming in to get something they need, right? Not what they want, but what they need. So their mood is to just, I need to get this, and I need to come in here, and I got to get this. And when they don't have it, they're annoyed. I never dealt with that well. In fact, I was miserable with it. And by the time I left, I was like, I'm never doing that again. And this was 2000. Yeah. And I was 22, and I was done. I was like, I'm never doing this again. I will never working a job I hate again. And I've gone through a lot of ups and downs since then. But one of my axioms is that if I'm going to be doing something, I have to at least like it. And I have to at least appreciate what I'm doing. And one of the things that motivates me and keeps me with the work-life balances you were talking about is that in order for me to keep liking what I'm doing, I have to remember that if the work overtakes the personal life, then everything I'm going to be enjoying is based around work. And that is kind of fleeting, because no one stays at the same thing they do forever. And if everything I'm doing is revolving around that, it's pretty empty. So I try to have a good separation of church and state. I'm like, this is exactly where this thing ends. Doesn't always work. I'm not saying that I'm successful, but I try to make it to where I separate those both. And I understand that I can enjoy life and do other things without having to constantly think about what I'm doing, constantly worrying about it, because it gets stressful, man. I'm sure you guys have experienced this yourself. It gets to the point where it's self-defeating. And
oh, absolutely.
I don't want to get to a point where I'm not enjoying. I enjoy podcasting. And quite frankly, I can't imagine ever not enjoying podcasting. It's been something that's driven me for so long. So if it gets to that point, I know I'm doing something wrong.
No, I hear you there, man. I think you hit the nail on the head, and we share a similar story there. I mean, I was in the grocery business for almost 20 years. You know, that was my first job, moved out through distribution, worked in the industry for a long, long time. And it wore on me. But some good things that I took away from it was it did teach me some, you know, communication skills, being out there in the market, interacting with people. There was some good takeaways from it, but right around the late, 20 teens, if you will, I just knew that I was done. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was starting to hit that point where this is not adding value to my life. Sure, it's complacent, it's a paycheck, but I don't want to do this. You know, I played in a band for a while here in Denver, the Ridge Runners. I started setting my focus on something that was going to bring me joy. And I realized I made a very honest commitment to myself that I want to work for myself and I want to be in control of my time and money. I'm not saying I want to get rich doing it, but I just want to enjoy what I do. And podcasting was there. And that's why I'm putting all my eggs in this basket now, taking those experiences from the past and the things that I've learned. Great. But that's not where I want to be. Like, I don't want to be unhappy at this job. I don't want to go work for the man that, I'm cussing under my breath. I want to come here and work for myself and enjoy what I do, and I think it's very tangible, with the right mindset, hard work, and commitment.
Yeah. And 100%. Have you both ever come to a point where you were like, and I'm talking about before you decided to invested into what you're doing with podcasting, did you ever reach the point where most people are, where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing? I'm like, I wish I knew, but I'm like, it not necessarily directionless, but it's like you reach that point where you're like, you don't like what you do and you would rather be doing something else, but you don't know what that is yet.
I mean, I can answer that to a certain extent. I knew what I wanted to do, but what happened is that I fell out of what I knew I wanted to do. So when I was like around 11 years old, I was young. I wanted to be a lyricist. I wanted to be a rapper, to be frank. And but a meaningful rapper, because I was, a kid that grew up in Park Hill, but then moved to Parker when I was young. So like, I was living in that suburban life, but back then, like it was about creating a message that was not tampered with by any outside forces. So it was like a pure message from me to be selfless and help humanity. Like that's kind of, and I got that from Tupac. Tupac was my inspiration for wanting to rap, how he spoke story. But so as I was growing older, I was very involved in that and the Denver scene and making music and making my own music and producing CDs and doing all that and performing and stuff. But it's when I caught that drug habit that I was talking about. And that slowly started, it was progressive. It slowly started becoming more and more of a priority to me. And I no longer was creating. I stopped creating. I lost my muse. That's when I didn't know what I was doing. That's when I had no clue what I wanted to do or what I was doing. And that was one of my most depressive mentalities that I've ever been in, was where I knew that I had the capability to do more. I knew that would make me feel better as an individual, but I wasn't chasing it. I wasn't getting after it. I was prioritizing the wrong things. So that was my specific circumstance, to where like I knew I was in a dead end, and I knew I was doing nothing that helped me feel personally fulfilled. Like you could check the boxes in life, but if you don't feel personally fulfilled, then it's going to be really hard to like smile as you fall asleep. So that's where I was at there. And it took a long time. And actually the effing podcast, if it wasn't for this and jumping back onto a creative platform to say something that is from my heart, that's uninterrupted by outside sources, I give a lot of credit to the podcast for keeping me accountable, but also bringing me like some happiness back into my life. And whatever it is though, like maybe it's not podcasting, maybe it's painting, maybe it's doing photography or training dogs or raising children, like whatever that is the most important thing, like one of the most important things to you, like you got to make that a priority. Like it has to be.
Right. We are, and I thank you guys for indulging me with that question, because I'm like,
that was a good question.
In the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe I should save this from when they're on my podcast. But
we can revisit this. We can revisit.
Yes, we can. It's interesting, very interesting you bring that up, because we are in a medium where a lot of times we share parts of our lives that maybe people who are doing radio don't necessarily do, because radio is really regimented. I did a radio show for about 6 months. So it is just like break, 15 minutes break, 15 minutes break, hit your brakes, do this, and this. It's very, you have a producer in your ear saying you need to do this, you need to do this. And, podcasts have producers now, right? But I still do everything by myself. Which I'm trying to branch out into people doing this for me. I honestly,
you gotta trust them.
I mean,
you gotta trust them.
A lot less stress in my life if I don't have to do this myself. But I mean, and all that being said, you reveal a lot about yourself through a podcast. You get to know more about someone intrinsically when they do a podcast, because it's conversations. And it's kind of what I like, because I feel like I'm getting to know someone very well. I was just listening to a podcast today about the movies of John Carpenter, and I love John Carpenter, but I learned more about the people who were talking about it because of their tastes and the way they talked about it and how they moved with it because of it. And I think one of the good things about podcasting is that you can find this sort of thing out without them feeling like you're violating any sort of privacy, right? Because this is what would happen if I was talking to you two normally. This in conversation would be exactly that way without me like interviewing you, which is once again, I got to work on that. But it is something that is appears organically, and that's what I love, And I think one of the things that I've enjoyed with the podcast I've listened to with you guys is that there's this discovery of conversation. And you learn about the people you're with. There was this guy you had on 2 weeks ago, a kid. I think he was. Yes, that's
Danny,
right.
Yeah, with the hair and the awesome earrings.
He had the Gen Z hair, and and there was that I learned so much about him. It was really fun to listen to, and I'm not someone who listens to a lot of rap. And I got to tell you, I'm not listening, but particularly anything past 1997, which is a fault of mine. But there is a like a discovery of that I just learned about the individual, and I really dug that. And I like how you guys draw that out in people. I really do.
Yeah, it's I think we kind of share the same thing, Jeff, because you can tell you're a fantastic host and you're a guest on our show. And I already know when we come on yours, it's gonna feel like a couple of bros just hanging out, shooting the breeze again, And I don't know if that's something that can be taught, learned. I think it's more of just staying authentic, staying organic, staying real, and saying the things you believe in. Because I'm sure after 600 episodes, there's been some controversial moments on your program, or maybe some heated exchanges. And that certainly happened. And that's always fun to grapple with, because, talking about keeping it real, we don't want it to always just be peaches and cream. Let's just show the tough times too. I mean, Art and I have got into it on the air. We've had disagreeing opinions, and I like that aspect too, because it shows that you can have varying opinions or different beliefs and be okay to sit down and talk about it, rather than just taking to the keyboard warrior or something like that. That's the other aspect about podcasts that I really like.
Yeah. Let me add on that, because we've touched on this a lot of times on this podcast, once before on this specific episode, but let's break the new social norms. The new social norms suck. Texting people all the time, that's how you're going to get to know somebody, is texting them. Like, can you listen to their personality through text, or are you just putting your own personality and reading it how you want to? Like, you're not going to get to know anybody through a text message or email. Like, I'm just going to gripe on this just for one moment. Like,
that's fine.
So like, you can go back and forth in texts for 20 minutes and accomplish what a phone call would do in 2 to 3 minutes. But the phone call would give you more personality than an emoji, more personality than a GIF, which are a lot of fun. If you haven't had a GIF war, I highly suggest that. But like, talking on the phone, doing these type of video calls, and actually getting to know people, seeing body language, hearing inflection in voice, that is human connection. And that helps deflect depression. When you're actually getting to know people on that level, beyond just reading whatever they're saying, that well thought out text. Like, because when you text, you could spend 30 minutes to an hour, like, re-critiquing what you're about to put down. And like, is that even genuine at that point? You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's this week's challenge. Okay. I like to come up with a challenge every single week. And this is one that we've touched on before, is like, actually pick up the phone. Like, if you got a best friend or a friend that you've been thinking about, they've been popping into your subconscious or whatever it is, like, listen to your intuition, just hit that person up and just call them. Like, let's actually get back to real interactions with people, because like how you grew up, Jeff, there was not all these video calls and texting and all this. Like you said, hey, I'm going to meet you by the fence next Friday. Guess what? Y'all met by the fence next Friday. That was it. That was the word.
And you look forward to it.
And you look forward to it.
There wasn't call to confirm, text confirm. Oh yeah, I'm still coming. You just knew. You set that definite plan and you met.
Yeah, I could go off on this for like 30 minutes, but yeah, come in.
But no. This is something that this is something that you guys will, I think, appreciate. I think the advent of Twitter was something that has been counterproductive for society, and in a sense that I don't need to hear what someone thinks about something like that much, and you can't help but see it, especially if you're constantly scrolling through the timeline. looking. And unfortunately, I have to have Twitter for this, for what I do. And I think that has reduced us to bite-sized things, 200 and whatever characters it is, 40 now. When I first started on Twitter in 2009, it was like 125 characters or something like that. Everyone was writing sentences to each other. And even then it was just too little. And even now it's too little, But when I was a kid, obviously there was none of this video capability. There was no texting. There wasn't even email. When I didn't get a computer until I was 14 or 15. I mean, it was late. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 25.
Wow.
I didn't even have a cell phone. All this stuff has exploded later. But the point I'm making is that the difference in technology is interesting in a sense that we are close now, but we are far apart. Everyone can see what everyone is thinking, like things like Twitter, Facebook, all these other things. But you never get to know someone. It is always, I get to see what this person says, but I don't get to know this person. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know how they're saying it. I used to, and this is something someone pointed out today, when I used to call someone's house, I used to have to interact with their mother first before I got to them.
Those were the days. The mom could like feel you out. The mom would like vet you out and like be like, yeah, what are your plans with my son tonight? And you're like, I just want to talk to Connor.
I just want to, please. I just want to talk to him. I don't need to be interviewed before I talk to your son. But there's like, but there is that part of it. And it's like, but for some of that, it forces you to interact with people. And I think that some of that is a good thing. I think there's a lot of antisocial stuff that happens because everyone's got the wall of technology. You don't face the consequences of your actions if you're trolling someone on the internet. You don't ever feel it come back to you like if you were, say, at a bar. Say like the three of us were at a bar and we interacted with someone and it says, hey, you're fat or something like that. And it's a difference between someone saying that in a bar, which they would obviously think twice about, judging based on the size of the people they are talking to, or someone on the, say, Twitter or Facebook or something like that saying that, where they don't have to make those calculations. So that's just like they say it and they don't feel the repercussions of it. And I think that has done us a disservice because things like this is
hey,
cool.
Jeff, really quick, because oh wait, are you back now?
Did I leave?
Okay, yeah, for like
audio cut out
for like 5 seconds. You know how these Zoom
I am
calls
so
go.
sorry. I have no idea.
Oh no, you're good. So it's like people are in a bar and they're gonna think twice about saying something offensive. Is where we last heard.
Oh, okay. They'll think about twice about it because they physically see you, and they're sizing you up. You don't do that with Twitter. Twitter is like, or Facebook, they don't have to see you, so they never get to see the consequences of their actions.
So true.
And whether you're insulting someone to their face or even complimenting them to their face, there's no risk involved because there's the wall of technology. And I really do think that's disappointing because I think interaction is key to everything.
Oh, so true.
Yeah, couldn't be better said, honestly. I mean, that's something we harp on a lot here on this program, is just that, some of the negative effects that we've seen from social media have pulled away from those real interactions. I like to challenge people to put their phones down, go have a meal with their friends, leave your phone in your car, keep that garbage away a little bit. Because you do see it. I mean, you see it a lot. You see people getting fired up, the keyboard warriors, right? Fired up nasty comments. But like you said, live action, if you're sitting down having a beer at the bowling alley, the approach is going to be quite a bit different, because now we're going eye to eye, we're man to man, toe to toe, whatever the case may be. The tone changes a little bit. And I think that's what we need to focus on a little bit more now that, some of the COVID restrictions are lifted and people can get back out and about. Because obviously for 2 years being quarantined and being indoors and everyone working from home, we got very used to the e-commerce and communicating through means of Zoom and Facebook calling, all that stuff. It made it more accepted, normal, natural, and it cushioned that need to have that opinion to cast on it, because there is no repercussions. You just fire off a text or a nasty social media post, and then you don't have to look at it. There is no ramifications. Whereas live action, it'll be like, well, wait a second, let's sit down and talk about this. Let me buy you a beer. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, let's definitely get back to that. And for anybody out there that is obsessive about making a comment about anybody else's lifestyle, like, I really feel like everyone should be able to live their own life on this planet. And even though I might not fully always understand what somebody's decisions is, I still come from a place of respect and love. And it's like, I'm trying to overcome my own demons, as we all are. Right. So my piece of advice is, if you are one of those keyboard warriors that loves to entice yourself with online drama and stirring the pot and senseless bullshit, basically, is like, really look in the mirror at yourself and like think for a moment, like what do you define as success? What is your personal definition of success? What is your personal definition of happiness? What's your personal definition of a good person? Like, are you living up to your own standards? Like, those are questions I feel like are missed in society frequently. And social media and this wall of technology that you talk about, Jeff, has only yet but distracted people from getting to know themselves. Like, we're all so caught up in catching the new trends and being a part of that trend that we're not making our own paths. And I feel like everyone has something of value to add to this world. And it's not going to come from anybody else's success. It's going to come from your own trials and tribulations. You know, so I just got a lot of gripes to pick with that, man. I got a lot of gripes with that whole, like I'm just going to sit here and focus on the negative and complain about things and this and that. Like, you know,
it's easy to complain.
Yeah, there's no time for that.
No, it's easy to complain. It's like I say almost every week, you know, a coin from Coach Corey Wayne, people will do more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. And it's easy to stay complacent. And, you know, we've touched on a lot of topics that relate to that tonight. And, you know, one of the things we like to kind of wrap our show up with, Jeff, is asking each individual, if you could offer humanity one piece of advice that would better us all tomorrow, what would that be?
Stop. I know what I should say. Okay, I'm going to do the usual Jeff thing and give you context before I give you the answer.
Please.
I am a 44-year-old podcasting former sports media member who likes, you know, just music. A music obsessive is what I am. I'm a music obsessive gay. And I was thinking, God, you know what? You know how schizophrenic that is, and how media sets that up and thinks it's like, this is like not something that is part of the whole package. I got to tell you guys, if I'm going to say something that will be something to the world, it's like, just be who you are. Because if there is anything in this world that is going to bring you along, even in this wall of technology, it's that if you are who you think you are, and if you are authentically who you are, the rest of the shit doesn't matter, because you will follow that path for the rest of your life. And I think if we are away from the walls and we get down to the core of who we are, and you are authentically yourself, that is all that matters. And that is what is going to save the world, is if people learn to be themselves authentically, to the point to where they don't care. I do not care what people think of me. I care what I think of myself. And through that reflection, I hopefully get people who are authentic to me. Authenticity and being true to yourself is the number one trait for anyone in this world. And I hope people kind of go down that path anyway. And I think it's harder for people, and as you say, man, it's like sometimes you got to go through the journey and you got to go through the bad spots, but sometimes that informs you who you are. People grow as people, but sometimes there's those cores. And if you are always true to that core, man, fuck, that's all that matters. That really is.
Solid advice. Yeah. Keep it true, keep it humble, stay authentic. I think that's really the big message we drove home tonight, all night long, all night strong. Be yourself. Don't be afraid to put it out there. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, be vulnerable at times. It's okay. Send it. Let's send it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like let's no, not let's, you, whoever's listening, me, myself, you, Kevin, you, Jeff, let's do the right thing. And we all know what the right thing is, right? The right thing is not always the easy thing to do. And that's just how the trumpet blows. I don't know if that's a saying or not.
It is now,
but that's that.
I'm going to be using that one later.
But it's not meant to be a cakewalk. Like, this is a journey that is treacherous. It's joyful. Like, you got to go through all the different, things to experience it all. And, at the end of the day, I've always had this definition of death, right? I'm laying on my deathbed. I'm about to die. And let's say that's tomorrow for me. Let's say that's tonight. Like, I'm going to be reviewing my whole life. And at this point in my life, I knew that I made a lot of mistakes, but I also know that I did things that I didn't know if I was capable of doing or not. And that challenge, getting myself uncomfortable, facing the fears, that's living. And the fact that I have already done that in my life, I would die happy. But the fact remains that I'm going to keep facing fears. I'm going to keep doing things that make me uncomfortable, that I second guess if I should even do that. Am I capable? I don't know. Let's fucking figure it out. That's how I feel. And I love all the words that you spoke tonight, Jeff. I love your energy, how consistent you are with being a creator, the opportunities you've created for other people, working on, so many epic projects. It's just, we're honored to chat with you and get to know you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. And it is a journey. And I think that I have one axiom that I've held true to my entire life is that the more you help other people and the more you give into, like, for at least with me with media, I would list, like, the thing that I like more than anything else was helping the people who just came in, who are new media members, showing them what to do and showing them all that stuff. That really was something that I actually liked more than doing writing and podcasting at the time. More than anything else was that just like helping people out is something that I wanted to do. And I think that authentically, coming back to that word, that is who I have tried to be. And shepherding people into a point to where they achieve their best self. Honestly, for me as a person, that is something that I'm like, you know what, it is something that I think that will carry weight into whatever next avenue I go into my life, because, I would rather someone else find success than me being the most successful person on the planet any day of my life, because it is something that means more. And it's not paying it forward, but it's like being the benefit of the world, the people around you, the world around you, making it better. And if you're able to do that, I mean, like you guys do, I'll be quite honest with you, your podcast, like in getting people to talk about themselves, and you really get to hear what authenticity, and to me, that's fucking great. And that's the whole point of life. So I'm hoping that if people listen to me tonight, because I've got the pads on the elbows and I'm wearing a tweed jacket with my with my professorial thing tonight.
You're looking good in that, man. I can tell you that. It's a good look.
And that is exactly the whole point. And I hope that everyone who's listening to that thinks the same thing. And when I have you guys on my podcast, I will let you interview me.
I look forward to that, Jeff. That's going to be a lot of fun, man, for sure. We'll have to pencil that date in. And of course, next time around, you'll be AIS, as we like to say, ass and seat.
In the studio. Yes.
Yep. Live action, 6 to 12 months from now. That's usually our turnaround for repeat guests. This has been a great conversation, man. We talked about some real stuff, and I appreciate your time. Had a lot of fun sharing a little beer and wine. It was a fine time.
It was. And I hope everyone learned a little more about these guys, and just a tiny bit about me when I am not interviewing people who are on, I'm on their podcast. I'm like, God dang.
Well, absolutely. We love what you're doing. We love the energy that you bring. Remember, everybody, the challenge this week is to get out there and actually have a real conversation. Make yourself face the fear. Let's face the fear this week. Let's go out there. Let's own it. Let's have a wonderful life. Believe and achieve. Let her rip, tater chip.
Yeah, absolutely. When John Ekstrom was on our program, he offered one of my favorite pieces of advice. He said, scroll down to the bottom of your text list and just call that person and check in on them and see how you're doing. That kind of echoes on what we talked about a little bit, and I think it's always good to remind yourself of that. Check in on them, see how they're doing. Give them a call. Maybe they don't answer. That's all right. Still give them a call. Maybe they will. So I like to go ahead.
John, I'm sorry about that. John's curiosities with me is that I don't actually have a cell phone. I have an iPad that people call me FaceTime audio on, and I have a landline, and he's like, man, landline. That's great, man. I love talking to people with a landline. I'm like, yeah, I know. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is this a independent thing, or is this just an old man thing? And I still haven't decided what it is yet. So I'm getting there.
I like it. I like it.
As long as it works for you, that's all that matters.
Correct.
That's right.
That's all that matters. So, hey, keep doing what works for you, man. And I'll tell you this, for all of our listeners, viewers tuning in, scroll down, check out the show notes. You can find Jeff Morton, epic man. What'd you say? You were the Jeff Morton of Thornton, the king of Thornton. How did that roll?
I used to be the king of Thornton, but I am J Morton 78 on Twitter. And I don't write anymore, but you can find me at CSG Podcast on any podcast network, and on Apple, Spotify, any of those, and the Gen X Show. So both of those are available out there. And like I said, my social media is J Morton 78. So if you want to find me there, find me there.
Solid.
Oh, they're gonna find you. We gonna keep churning this butter. Everybody out there, bake that bread, spread that butter on the bread, toast the bread with the butter toasted on it. What I'm trying to say is make it delicious.
Make it delicious, make it your own, but whatever you do, be good to yourselves. You deserve it.